If you think that this is the skeleton of a saber-toothed tiger, unfortunately you are very wrong. This skeleton belongs to a fat and stocky animal. This is the skeleton of a walrus. The tusks, which are actually their fangs, can be up to 1 meter long, being the most distinctive body part of this amazing animal. Perhaps no modern animal has fangs sticking out of its mouth like this. In the cold of the Arctic, this finned mammal has developed a series of adaptations that have allowed it to survive for thousands of years in the place that has been its home. After struggling from the threat of poaching, it now seems that their home is becoming increasingly uncomfortable to live in. This is the story of how walruses try to survive in an increasingly changing world. The Arctic is a polar region located in the northern region of the Earth. This region includes parts of Norway, Sweden, Finland, Russia, Greenland, the United States, Canada, Iceland, along with the Arctic Ocean, which is the smallest of the 5 oceans in the world. Cold temperatures can reach -40 degrees Celsius, and unlike the South Pole, in the North life is at least more diverse. Plants can still grow in this place, although only small, low-growing plants. Don't forget iconic animals such as polar bears, and among the species that live in the Arctic, large walruses fill the area around the coast. They are quite easy to recognize with their large bodies and stocky, and don't forget the impressive tusks, which are very long under the face, which makes it look worn. The origin of the name walrus is still being debated. Some think that the name comes from Dutch, which means whale horse, a combination of the words wolfus, which means whale, and rose, which means horse, a cognate with German walrus and Danish walrus, which has the same meaning. Apart from the general term, the scientific name of the walrus is Odobenus rosmarus, which means seahorse that walks with teeth. This name was given not without reason, because one of the uses of their long tusks is to help them pull their very large bodies out of the water. This name was given by Carl Linnaeus in 1758, which was the first scientific description of this animal. Walruses, such as seals, elephant seals, and sea lions, are members of the suborder Pinnipedia, which is a member of the carnivore order. The same order as many predatory mammals, for example the cat, dog, civet, bear, and hyena families. If we feel that humans are the most alone species, the walrus seems to be much more alone than us. The walrus is the only species from the Odobenidae family still alive today. In fact, through the fossil record, this family was once quite diverse, encompassing more than a dozen fossil genera, but now only the walrus remains. Of this one species, there are 2 widely recognized walrus subspecies, namely the Pacific walrus, which is mainly found in sea-bearing and quality. The Atlantic is found in the West Atlantic and East Arctic regions. From this map, we can see how the walrus is distributed in its habitat. The 2 subspecies are recognized based on morphological characteristics and mitochondrial DNA divergence. There is another subspecies of walrus proposed, namely the Lavtev walrus, but this 3rd subspecies is still debated. The Circle of Meaning is a place that is home to walruses. But the closer you get here, the more unfriendly the house becomes. The Arctic does have very cold temperatures, but that is not a problem for walruses, because they have adapted well to survive in the Arctic Circle. Walruses have thick skin, reaching 2 to 4 centimeters thick. This is one of the thickest skins they have. Animals. A 15-centimeter thick layer of fat under their skin adds resistance to the Arctic cold. But it is not the cold that seems to be their enemy, but the heat. When the Arctic waters begin to warm, the ice sheets begin to melt. This condition forces the walrus herds to immediately leave the ice sheets, which are starting to melt. Walruses, especially Pacific walruses, are very dependent on the movement of ice in their migration. If they don't move immediately, their survival will be threatened. Without ice for a place to rest, a walrus could drown in the middle of the ocean. Moving to the rocky beaches around the Arctic, thousands of walruses have gathered here. They can be seen lying everywhere while emitting snoring that is not pleasant to hear. In fact, Pacific walruses prefer to use sea ice as a platform to rest. In this area, they can easily access food on the seabed. But recently, it seems that natural conditions have become less friendly. In recent years, the melting of the ice has occurred earlier and during the summer. The ice cover has dropped drastically, forcing herds of walruses to land on beaches because there is no sea ice in the shallow areas they prefer to find food. On some beaches, tens of thousands of walruses have even been recorded gathering. Sometimes the land is not large enough to accommodate so many walruses, although it is not unusual for male walruses to gather in large numbers on the coast. Female walruses usually prefer boulders, floating ice as a birthing place and a place where mother walruses leave their young while they are looking for food. Walruses are social animals. They are used to being in crowds, but too many crowds can be dangerous. They can trample each other when trying to move from land to water. Many walruses, especially young walrus calves, die in this process. Those who survive cannot breathe a sigh of relief because they have to travel very long distances to find food, because nearby food sources are quickly running out. In contrast to other Pinnipedia relatives, such as seals, walruses primarily feed on bivalvia such as shellfish, while most other Pinnipedia feed more on moving, more mobile prey such as fish and crustaceans. This diet affects the biology of walruses compared to other Pinnipedia. Walruses must have a less slender body, swim slower and dive less deeply. They can dive to a depth of 500 meters, but when compared to seals, seals can dive to deeper depths, from 1,000 meters. Walrus swimming speed is around 10 kilometers per hour, and on average they can survive in the water for around 5 to 20 minutes. This is in line with their type of prey, which is an organism that does not move quickly, and walruses prefer to find food in shallow seas where their whiskers are stiff. On their faces can help them feel the surface of the ocean floor. In other places, herds of walruses also managed to arrive, but sometimes they had to land on land with steep rocky cliffs. A documentary was once made, showing beaches that were so crowded with walruses that some walruses unknowingly walked up to high cliffs. Animals that can't climb. They don't understand the height of the cliff. When they want to enter the water, one by one they start to fall freely on the rocky cliff. Even though their bodies are stocky and like rubber balls that fall from above, few of them will survive death. What we see shows how global warming, which causes climate change, is a real threat to walruses, which is actually the biggest factor in global warming. This is not because of their actions, but they also have to feel the bad impacts caused. Walruses are currently categorized as protected animals, but before global warming threatened them, there was a time when they had to face excessive hunting by humans. In the middle of the noisy crowd, two males were seen fighting, each showing off his long tusks. Both of them tried to hit each other with their tusks, but their skin was thick enough for the amazing tusks to penetrate, especially since male walruses have thicker skin than walruses. Females. Fights like this are very common among walrus crowds. Apart from fighting, tusks are also a symbol for them. Although both sexes have tusks, but generally the tusks of male walruses are longer. For adult males, tusks can be a sign of dominance. The strongest males with the largest tusks usually dominate the social group. In another corner, the largest land carnivore has just stopped by a beach full of walruses. This polar bear seems quite hungry after swimming across the ocean as far as the eye can see. He only found a herd of walruses, but walruses are actually not easy prey to beat, but polar bears have no choice. In the wild, polar bears are one of the natural predators of walruses, although walruses are not their main prey. Crowds of walruses are so fierce, their skin is too thick to bite. Their fangs are so threatening. Walrus cubs may be perfect prey, but remember, their mother will always guarding it. Sometimes even the opposite. The walrus actually becomes a threat to the polar bear itself. The safest option, perhaps, is to eat a walrus carcass or a walrus that is alone and weak. Apart from polar bears, the walrus's next natural predator is underwater, the killer whale, the orca. Even though walruses can also defend themselves, it seems that orcas can prey on walruses better, although again, it is not their main choice. Orcas and polar bears, these are the only two animals that are natural predators of walruses. But there is one species that is at the top of the food chain, which of course does not miss walruses as its prey target, none other than humans. We will go back to around the 18th to 19th centuries. At that time, there was indeed a massive whale hunt, where the catch was an important commodity for industrialization. These whaling fleets also targeted walruses as targets. They, of course, caused a drastic decline in the walrus population at that time. Walruses are generally hunted for oil, meat, and not for getting their ivory, without thinking about the long-term impacts of this activity. This intensive exploitation even almost wiped out the Atlantic walrus species, causing local extinction in certain spots, and it became very difficult to find them. After all that, hunting was finally banned. This is the Inuit people. They are native people who inhabit the Arctic region around North America. Walrus is an important component in many of the needs of these Native American people. Traditionally, they hunt walrus for use as food, crafts, and the skin is used for clothing. Not only Inuit people, various other native peoples and tribes have also used walrus for a long time. Walrus are also very close to the myths and folklore of these native people. Hunting of walruses for industrial and commercial needs is now prohibited, and currently only residents and indigenous tribes around the Arctic are legally allowed to hunt walruses. The dark times where walruses were hunted down may have ended, but their struggle to continue to exist on Earth does not seem to stop. Apart from global warming, which was discussed previously, human activities around their habitat risk disturbing these animals, not to mention the addition of pollution and damage to the sea. From the Arctic, we have seen how walruses don't know anything about what is happening to their environment. As the last species of the Odobenidae family that still survives, walruses just want to live as their species should. That's all for this video. Thank you.